education curriculum that has been already created and the government has rolled out has got a lot of, let me say, a lot of gaps, because we tend to churn out very many students who are half-baked. They lack a value system, so you find that you've got great professors or great doctors who come out and they will still go down to the county and embezzle funds for development. And you see, these are the professors. Let me say something I said earlier. I said that if you educate a thief, he becomes an educated thief. And he uses his education to steal. So what I would say is that we need to create or modify the education system to inculcate a value system where the morals that are required go hand in hand with education. Because what we are seeing even right now, even the reason that you find the education system is not at top, is you will find that most of the people who've got these funds in their hands are educated, yes, but they are pursuing self-interests. And so they will go down to the ground and create systems or create places where we could actually help the people who really need it. So I think we need to have that kind of education system that teaches people how to share. It teaches people about sacrifice, teaches people patriotism, teaches people how to lay down their lives, to give, honesty, hard work. And also having a heart for the communal, for the poor, for the less privileged. If we find a way of causing the education system to maybe, it may not do it on its own, but become a platform through which we can teach these values, after 20, 30 years we'll have proper development, because people out there will actually care for his neighbor. Yeah.
So a moral angle there, and building people who are integrity people,
yes.
driven people.
Yes.
Okay, let's hear from Lily.
So, building off that, I think at Ilimo, when we started the work that we're doing, we digitized the curriculum and we loaded it on here, and immediately one of the things that was glaring us in the face was, oh my God, is that it? Is that all we are teaching these young people? And so we developed a whole nother curriculum that's now bigger than the regular curricula. And it's extended learning, and it's focused on that responsible citizenship. That if we're going to have Vision 2030, who are the people who are going to be leading our country in 2030? Who are the people who are going to be leading our politicians, leading our economy, in our workforce? And are they going to have a sense of integrity about what it means to be a Kenyan, to be an African, and to do that with a sense of meaning? So, we're so vested in this responsible citizenship and what that means, and can you teach integrity to a child? Or is it the children have integrity? Because when you go on the playground, you hear, that's not fair. And the kids know. It's just us who tell them, well, it's okay if you're rich. Or it's okay if you're a politician. It's okay if you're driving a big car. So we need to go back and reevaluate where that integrity comes from.
Thank you. A very good morning to all of you. Well, for me, I feel I define education from the words of one of my great mentors as to teach a man or woman to think as he has never thought before, so that he behaves as he has never behaved before, so as to achieve results that he has never achieved before. So for me, education is holistic. It is not just school and academics. One of the things I feel, like right now we are bringing about the aspect of value. Value is very key. So I feel that we have become very, very academic to our approach in education. And our education system currently, the 844 system, of which I am a product, so I am proud of it, I feel that the gaps are that it is very, very academic.
I think it's important to understand where you are so that you can deal with the issues that you're facing. And we are talking about Africa today, we are talking about Kenya. And so where is Africa and where is Kenya in the context of even global affairs? Now here we are faced with a continent. And here if Africa were to be treated like a country, it would be the third biggest economy in the world, the 10th biggest economy. But we have a continent here which continually faces challenges of health, of education, of poverty, of political instability, and this has continued to be a big song And I'm wondering in myself, is there a way education can address this? And unemployment, of course, and all the other youth challenges of the youth. Africa is playing in a continent or in a global setting where countries are becoming more and more individualistic. Every country wants to create wealth, and every country is fighting for dwindling resources against growing populations. So we are seeing a lot of people migrating to other countries to exploit resources. And this is where I want to touch, is our education able to step in the gap and deal with this migration in a way that benefits the country? And we'll discuss those issues as we go forward. And then we are facing a continent again, which is suffering major image issues because of stories and headlines which are developed by other people regarding Africa. Do we have an education that we can give to people at 2063 for Africa? So in Addis, 2 weeks ago, they made very many proposals. And one of the proposals which was made is the formation of a Pan-African university. And that for me is a stamp of confidence in an education system saying, yes, we recognize education can change Africa. And therefore we'd like to have a Pan-African university where we can share knowledge, we can share skills, we can share experiences, and we can even discuss the kind of education we would have for our children. So I think this conference can pick up on that and ask what would be the objectives of the Pan-African University. If we could stop our professionals being used to do these clever outflows, transfer pricing, through the multinationals, and exporting money outward and being told we cannot manufacture, so we continue to importing and again exporting our money outward, then we could pump into the African economy $50 billion every year. And that is a lot of money for development. So we need to have that discussion probably at that particular level. So looking at this, can we use education to transform Africa? And my answer is yes. And what kind of education then that we need? I will not dwell on the challenges because they have been dwelt on. We need an education that is all inclusive. Complete the education triangle of skills, knowledge, and attitude. And the attitude will teach character development. And I think that is why our government has got a whole chapter on national values. That as you go to school, you are taught national values of patriotism, pride in yourself, and pride in your country. Teaching character at the very basic level from nursery up to university so that we can develop that personal pride, pride in ourselves, pride in our country, and also pride in our continent. And we can stand up as policemen to defend the cause of Africa and to discuss the cause of Africa and contribute. Then we need an education where it is inclusive. People are able to access this education easily because I think our education system sometimes is a bit unequal. That there are people who are able to access this education and others who are not. So holistic, inclusive education, and then we need an education that is integrated into our culture. An education that can objectively address our culture. As the NGOs are fighting FGM, the practice of FGM is increasing because it is being taught in a silo. We are not integrated into the entire system. So an education that is inclusive, that is integrated into the rest of our way of life, whether it is social, political, or economic.
Practically speaking, if you look at our health indicators in this country, you find that the areas that are not performing very well are related to the education levels of our girls. And these are areas like maternal mortalities, the infant mortalities, where you find that low literacy levels are associated with poor indicators. If I look at the content of education in our medical school, as a manager in Nairobi County at before you come, I would say that it is wanting. We have our medical doctors, these young doctors, even the kind of clothes they wear to go and see patients. Sometimes we go for supervision and we tell them to go and change. And this is because we are not building the character during our training. We need to change the approaches we have now. We have very many universities who are training medical doctors. I agree that education is the bedrock for development in that educated girls. Like, if I give an example of myself, we were brought up as 9 girls, but you will see a lot of disparities among us. Basically speaking, I would agree with them that we need to do more into the character, because even when we have top managers, you see the kind of managers we have, the kind of issues that in the government system, the young brother here has talked about, the corruption. You know, you are so educated, but the things you do not, align to your education. You need to look at the education system in Kenya and do the corruption. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Musyoka. A lot of themes coming out of here, but I think the one that has come out the most is the integrity part. And we'll talk about that a bit later and open it up to the audience. But when it comes to making sure that the education system serves those who are doing it well in terms of employability, in terms of productivity and growth, how can we ensure that, and you talk about the mindset change as well, we're being fed one narrative which is not really reality. And how do we change, one, mindsets, and two, ensure that the education system is serving those who are in it well, as the quality of education is improved? Mary, I think I'll start with you since you touched on that a bit, and then we'll go on to the next panel.
I think we need first to answer the question of why do we go to school? Yeah? Just why do we go to school? And we have this historical perspective that we go to school so that we can get better jobs, we can earn money, and we can do better. It is true. And as people have proved, like my sister is saying here, those who have gone to school, the school has opened a lot of channels for them. But remember now we need to come back to the context of an Africa and a country where classical employment is good. The chances of you working in a classical employment, employed by a boss 8 to 5, that window is good. That education and the practical skills must continue in the job market. And I know you can identify with this because you went through university and you did a degree in communication. But really, everything else you've learned outside of that. And so that is important, that discussion, and that is why we are proposing inter-university industry relations. Those linkages are very good, and I'm seeing what now universities are forming, the university alumni is having a very big role to deal with that, for skills and knowledge transfer beyond the degree, training people beyond that. Then, in terms of addressing relevance again, flexibility in our learning methods. I think universities need to discuss with industry so that we have what I would call sandwich learning now. And it can be done. There are countries who have done it and it has worked. So I think that would be a good proposal, just how we make our education as flexible as possible so that it allows you to practice as you learn. I agree with her here. We need curriculum uploaded on other platforms other than the teacher-student physical exchange.
Given the particular area that you are in, you now go out on an internship. And statistics are showing that many of those organizations and companies want to hire those students after the internship period has ended. I'm sure we're not the only one doing it.
I want to get your take on the mindset change. You deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business leaders, in terms of applying what they know to become more productive and impactful. Just take us through what you feel needs to happen in terms of a mindset change.
When this age student becomes 40, they are actually not as glamorous as they would have been using the trajectory they were on when they were 20 years old, when they were 18 years old. Why is that? Why? Could it be that their inability to apply what it is that they have learned, therefore to achieve greatness, to perform in a certain way that puts them on a certain platform, good performance at work? I think these are the things that we can look at. And what is it that we're celebrating? Can we change what we're celebrating so that we can begin to recognize it?
Thank you. Libby, you want to respond to that?
I think there's so many statistics we can say about the Kenyan education system. And a really good website is uwezo.net for that, about dropout rates and the performance of the girl child. One of the really shocking statistics that they came up with was they spent 3,000 hours doing classroom observation. So watching a classroom for 3,000 hours, and questions were answered, lessons were given, but during those 3,000 hours, not one question was asked by a student. And so if you think of a student who spends 8 hours a day, 12 or 16 years of their life sitting and learning and absorbing knowledge and not being able to explore that part of their mindset that is curious, that wants to know more, that is stimulated by external factors, then what does that do to their mindset? And I think now when we talk about knowledge and skills and how that translates into an employee or a leader or an entrepreneur in the job, then what kind of problem-solving skills does that child or adult have? What kind of cognitive thinking skills do they have? What happens when something unexpected happens at the workplace? Are they not able to compute how to think creatively about going around that problem and innovating about it? So I think the entire education system, and I know a lot of this comes from home, and the onus is on the parents as well, but just the amount of time we give our children to a school, an institution that should educate them, we need to think about what's happening while they sit in those classrooms and how they're getting used to, I guess, formulating ideas and processing information. And if you're constantly doing that passively, eventually that catches up with you. And eventually we have an economy of people who are not empowered to be good leaders, who are not empowered to be creative thinkers. So I think there's something more than just, churn out more university grads, churn out less dropouts. And we need to think a little bit more creatively about how to impart knowledge to children with a severe teacher shortage, and yet give them the space and comfort and, I guess, just playground to be able to be children and to be able to express their curiosity and explore. You don't need to be touching a human being to understand that. You can watch a video, you can look at an image, you can read through that yourself at that age. So that the flipped classroom is do that at home. Okay, so do the basic just reading, understanding, pause, rewind, turn up the volume, watch the bits that you don't understand again, write down your questions. Now the bit that we call homework, let's do that in the classroom. The bit where a human being, a teacher, someone who knows that you're having a bad day, someone who knows that it's hot and you're tired, where a human being can interact with you and help you where you're struggling.
And there's something that we said around even the way the employer, when you look at the employer always asks for a graduate. The employer will always ask, when you look at the ads and what is it that we are looking for, the first thing that they'll say is bachelor's in so and such and such from a recognized university. MBA, a master's degree is an added advantage. Sometimes that there's something an added advantage, it has become a requirement. Now I remember one time I was actually recruiting. And what happened is that we're recruiting middle-level managers. I remember the CEO asking me, this French, we were actually, it was a started acquisition, so we're taken over by a French company. So he asked me, what is the profile of manager you're looking for? And the first thing I told him is a bachelor's degree. And he stopped me right there. And he asked me, what if someone doesn't have a degree but demonstrates that they can perform the job?
That is a perfect segue into our next discussion, which is applying skill. And we talked about that man who's 50 years old, he's a millionaire, but probably dropped out in class 4. And he's content, because he feels, I have my money, I have my assets, I don't need that piece of paper. So how do you get people to start thinking in terms of how can I apply the skill set and the knowledge to be productive and to add to, if it's an institution or the business that you started, how do we get that started?
And he was a millionaire. And from a little girl, I knew that this man was a millionaire. But I also remember that he didn't finish high school. So it was embedded in my head at that early age that you don't have to have the education to be a millionaire, if you will. You don't have to have the education. However, the society was pushing that you do get the education. And even today, society is still pushing that you do in fact get that education. So what I'm going to say on this particular issue is that yes, go for the aid, go for the degree, but at the same time, you have to become more well-rounded and put yourself in an institution or a university where it's not just the aid. And I think in today's world, again to the credit of institutions in Kenya, they're just not allowing the student to be good with the aid. They must perform in community service. It is true. They must. They must go out on internship. They must talk about what they have done over and above what you're asked to do within the institution. So I would like to say in my experience in America, as well as the 3.5 years I've been in Kenya, these things are happening at the institutional academic level. Indeed they are. And if I might go even a little further to say, sitting right here in the front room is one of our students from USIU Africa who has a skill in being a rapporteur. I called her up on the phone and I told her about the conference. And I said, honey, I want you to be there. Is she here? Yes, she is here. And it is part of her what? Community service. Your contribution to that?
For me, I think we need to deal with something about the education system. But before that, I want to say how we develop the education system. You have to remember that Africa has come, Africa doesn't have, it has a bit of problems that some first world countries don't have. Africa was colonized. When you say Africa was colonized, what you need to understand is everything they were training. I spoke to some of my older uncles, grandfathers, and they told me they used to make the education system so hard that they had to make sure that they drop out at class 4 so that they could be tea pickers for the white settlers. And they made sure that they had so many entrance exams, class 1, class 4, class 7, to make sure that as many as possible, the exams were actually used to fail the black students so that they could be tea pickers. So we need to understand the kind of education system we're coming from. So this kind of education system and also some of the ranking and some of the things that were in the education system were not really to promote the great leaders. You see, if you come from a background of oppression, what you do, you become corrupt. Because every land you want to amass wealth because you lacked it when you were growing up. So you use every opportunity, and when you get power, you use that to amass wealth or gather it together because you are afraid that one day you will not have it again. So they amass too much, and they over-amass. So you find someone who owns a forest of 100,000 acres, and you're wondering what he's not developing it, it's not helping it. So the kind of education system these people went through, they were oppressed. Are you the teacher or am I the teacher? You know what I'm saying? So it created a kind of mindset where you keep quiet. At home, same thing. Our parents were brought on the same system. Children are not to be heard. They're only to be seen, and they only appear at specific. So what we're doing, we're trying to solve something, but we need to go to the root. Understand that the oppressive kind of culture of where people come from have created a kind of people who all of them are trying to survive, So a billionaire has still the poverty mindset. So you see him and he wants to amass more and take more. So what can we do to change this? I wrote down something and I say that education, what we can do is maybe we need also to retrain the teachers. We need to write down, have conferences, Some of these teachers, free them. Ask them to free. Once we free the teachers, we can free the students. So why don't we do something? Think outside the box. Let's stop using this archaic colonial kind of system of imparting knowledge. And let's say, why don't we do this? Like, for example, Equity Bank one day trained 1 million people, and most of them were illiterate. They targeted 1 million people to train them in managing finance. Why don't we create a partnership structure with banks, which are closer to the people, teach them basic skills?
So when I think of applying those kind of skills in the workforce, you know, we hear these, oh, we should have more engineers, more doctors, great. But as an employer, I wish there were more people applying to my organization who could write a 3-paragraph email with no spelling mistakes, none of that text English, texting English, and just, you know, be able to tell our own stories. Because that's the only way forward.
Education is complex, just for the purposes why you want to get it. But I think one thing our government now needs to stop doing and then start doing again is making all the polytechnics into universities. I think that needs to stop. We need to stop that. Number one, we need to accept that attrition will be there. There are people who will drop off at standard 8. How do we make them relevant? And that is why we need to have institutions that are training those kind of people to become what they want to become. As we are increasing our ratio of doctor population, doctor to population, you know we don't have plumbers in Kenya. If you really want a good carpenter, you may not get. And if you really want somebody to work on your car, you may not get. So I think now we need to discuss the issue of balancing academics and technical very seriously. If I'm going to come to your house and look at the plumbing work, you are going to pay me exactly what you pay the kidney specialist who looks at your body. So I think we need to now start education like that, those kind of discussions, so that they can also have pride in themselves. For me, I have 4 children, and I said here, I don't care what everybody is saying, we are not having a discussion. A first degree is a must. If I'm going to put it through your throat by force, I will do it. We select schools because I love the school of St. Louis, because it allows me to be worried. It is not a school where students get a name, but if you work on them, they can still get a name. But it's a school which allows you to be a musician, it allows you to be a teacher. It's an alumni, but I thought I was told that I could teach and then you can teach. She has a degree, isn't it? And now she's doing something else. So let's use that degree as a canvas.
Among the people who should be well paid up there is the teacher. Because the teacher is molding the future generation. The teacher is the one who is molding the leadership that we're talking about. Earlier on, Laura Adveso spoke of a certain number of years ago, I believe it was in the early 70s, we were actually at par with Singapore. And today they are way ahead of us. See, in Singapore, the teacher is the highest paid profession. So as we are having discussions, we always see teachers striking and we see teachers being threatened and so on and so forth. I truly feel that is no way to treat the people in whose hands we have entrusted our children and the future generation, the future of this country.
Thank you. And Dr. Misioka, a parting shot before we open for a few questions in the audience.
Yeah, I would just like to comment on medical training. Medical training is a very highly skilled, intensive. It's really intensive. But I have particular concerns about many universities who have opened medical school when they don't have training capacities. And in particular, for us who are managers, we are seeing doctors from some university cannot manage a patient even after internship on their own. Most of our young doctors also want to prefer to work in Nairobi, near Mami, yeah? So that they can drive from home. Yeah? During my time, we preferred to go out, because when you're out there, you are like the surgeon. Please, look at the university you are taking your daughter or your son to, because some universities have lowered the entry requirement just to tap, because you know medicine, there is money, it's also a business.
Thank you, Dr. Misioka. I want to open up to the audience.
My name is Grace Mercy. I think when it comes to education and the quality, when we come to EG Nairobi, the quality is much better. But what if or to come? We might be speaking of education and getting the degree, but when it comes to the nitty-gritty of literacy, way beyond outside Nairobi, going to Turkana or Garissa, it's even worse, yeah? And so how do you bridge that gap? When you want a degree, you may want someone to know A to Z or 1 to 100.
I gave it my points just similar to her, maybe just add on that. When we are talking of much of our focus here, according to the discussions, is based on already people in school. That's why we're talking of degrees and the like. But I think we are missing another. There is this big gap in rural areas where we have people or children who haven't gone to school at all. And this is a very big problem. And when we look at the population of this group, it's so big that it has a very negative impact on the development or on the plans of whatsoever we are doing here. And an educated person can do something better, or can better deal with a person who is going to school than somebody who hasn't gone to school at all. And this is the first issue that I was looking at. And that's the most remote person in the rural areas where there might be schools, distance of schools, or even chance to go to school because of poverty. These are some of the challenges which are being experienced by people in our countries. And another issue which also I noted is some dropouts are done at a very early stage, standard 1, standard 2. You find a child has dropped out of school, and now that child, maybe some of the problems that we noted because maybe the parent is a widow, the parent is a poor woman, and this is the challenge which women are facing. They cannot manage a child. As a result, that child moves out of school, goes in the streets and starts begging. And this is a very important area. How do you support an orphan and neglecting the mother? And that orphanage is being supported for 1 or 2 years, and that child still has to get be attached to the poor mother who has nothing. So I think the best is to support a mother so that that mother has to support the child herself.
My concern, and I think it's the concern of my president, university, yes, I went to university, I have so many degrees, that's not enough. There are certain things that I can't do, and that's why I have so many degrees. But a person who is skilled, technical, he or she will be able to do something better for our country. Now, what I'm suggesting is that it's unfortunate young girls are not enrolling in these rural technical colleges as much as we should. I think there must be a deliberate policy from our governments to tell the parents, take your daughters to technical colleges.
Thank you, sir. I'll take these last 4 because we're actually cutting into lunchtime. The lady in the purple. And okay, let's keep it very, very short because we're cutting into lunchtime.
I'll start by thanking you because you've done a good job. My name is Margaret. My one concern about our education in Kenya is that it's so expensive. The cost of education in Kenya is very expensive. And when you keep saying that we have free education, especially in primary, I wonder how free is this free education? Because we still have so many children, especially girls, who are not able even to acquire this basic education because they cannot afford the many other things that are included to be paid by the parent. Also looking at our universities, I really do not know what happens because the normal university cost is at least manageable. But there is this parallel education where the child is supposed to be so much, and at the same time they are going to sit in the same class. So what's the difference? Why make this one very cheap and this one very, very expensive? Who decides what should be paid? And what do they consider to be included in that cost? Recently, we had the Kenyan leaders warning the principals not to make the cost of education very expensive. And I was like, they were being warned, you principals, stop this, stop that. And I'm like, are they left alone to decide what they want to charge? Is there no governing council in this country that can decide what should be paid in schools, which is affordable by everybody? Or are we leaving them to decide what they want? And if we are saying that everyone in this country needs education, then we need to consider what is charged. Otherwise, we still have house girls today, child labor, because they cannot afford school fees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Commander. I come from Uganda. I think I agree with you with all what you have said, but I have a few questions. Because of course, education is very good, portfolio wise, etc. You can have a very good Pan-African university there, but which entirely teaches pan-European ideas. So that will really lead to issues. Then what about, I like your the separation of being academic and not academic. But what is the aim? I mean, how at what level shall we make that distinction? I like the idea of employment and all that. But you know, like we have been told, 60% of our land is still arable, yet we are grumbling that our children do not have jobs. I remember in the 1970s, there was a man called Idi Amin in Ghana. He subjected Ghana to hardships, even discouraged education. People shifted and abandoned education, but they went to Cape, the equivalent to Bedrock here. And they started fabricating things. Now, there's a lot of work going on there, a lot of innovation, but people are not even going to school, formal school. You tell a student now who has finished university, so can you come and we work the farm? After all, this farm that has goats and cows, the same farm that put in school. Now with an added education, can he transform what was a Nyankore cow, grown corn, into a more productive cow than an exotic? They cannot do that. They want ties, they want to sit in offices, and they're looking for jobs in offices. They must all come to Kampala, come to Nairobi. They don't want to stay in rural areas to transform the society. Education, yes, is good for us to get money and all that, change ourselves, as most people think. But also education that is not going to enable you to change the world, to change your environment, as you put it, is useless education. So before we go to business entrepreneurs, for example, let's also start thinking of creating a group of social entrepreneurs. Social entrepreneurs that are going to actually unlock the potentialities of our people in the rural areas to do better. Turn the situation in Turkana, turn the situation in Karamoja, where we are dealing with young kids running after animals that produce nothing, just because they have been taught by their own culture that that's what matters. And you are not even able to transform that culture. So I don't know how we should do it. Yes, the government should have a deliberate policy on some of these things, but the problem is that some of these governments of ours also have grown up in an era, well, I don't know, but something, I said something prior to it. You talked about technical schools, which is my museum there, which I appreciate. But do you know that we had technical schools? We destroyed them. We talked about the structured adjustment program. They came at a particular time, we brought by certain people, destroyed those technical schools, transformed them into universities, and went further and destroyed universities. Those universities were in the 70s and 80s and even universities. And yet we are talking about transformation, development, of a better future, of a better Africa. What discussions are we going to have with those who destroyed those technical schools now so they change their mind? Isn't the status quo still an impact? I'm still a little bit on my
Thank you. Hi, I feel like I'm a bit of an intruder. I grew up in South Africa and have been living in the UK for the last 20 years, and I provide advice to the UK Department of Education. And I've been listening with interest to a lot of what you've been saying. I think there are a couple of fundamentals that we're finding in the UK where we have perpetuated an education system which has been around academic achievement and not thinking about what the economy needs. If you can't add up the profits at the end of the day, you're never going to have a business that is going to make any money. So thinking about that, and then also thinking about understanding the child and where their true skill sets are. They may be the musician of the future, they may be the mechanic of the future, but celebrate their success and allow them to build up the confidence that they may not be the next mathematician or the next economist, but they are the person that can be celebrated around the skill sets that they have. So think about it in the round and think about the economy that you're trying to build, not the economy that you've inherited that is based on institutional success, degrees, academic attainment.
Thank you. My name is Paula Wanjari. Now, I want to maybe give solutions or action points to two particular things. One in how the education doesn't serve well. I do believe that churches can come and mitigate this gap. And I've actually seen it happen, for example, like in my mom's church. She started her church mainly from a ministry of children from the biggest slum in Pika called Kianduki. And it started with 3 children, and now there are over 100 who come every Sunday. And one certain boy has always been an inspiration for me. He came and he was in class 5 and could not speak English. In 3 years, that boy is expected to actually do his basic exam, but he can't speak English. And in the past 2 years, I see him, we converse in English. He can now sing in English. And it's basic things from singing the choruses of the hymns from church and participating in the children's church. And to top it all off, those children from the slums integrate with children from middle income families. They see what they want to be. From coming to church with your dirty linen, and you don't have shoes, to on Sunday, I remember I clean my clothes and come to school. So I do believe that this is a way that you can, like churches can come in. I know that they have a holiday program where students from class 6, 7, and 8 every day come for 2 hours and do cards and whatnot from other private institutions. And that has enabled at least 4 children to do KCP last year. So I don't believe churches can come in. Secondly, the Kenyan curriculum changed significantly in the 90s. We had subjects like civic education, art and craft, agriculture, home science. By the time I was doing my primary education, those subjects were scrapped off. And there was civic education, there was HIV and AIDS, there was sex education. Now none of those subjects are in place. So I don't believe if we approach in the government, instead of trying to tell them, change the entire curriculum, probably it's just to tell them, just bring back the subjects. The teachers will competition. Just simple. Just bring back the subjects that you had once removed. And that starts now, those children that you want to join the technical schools, pick up them art and craft, or carpentry, or masonry, from when I was in class 4. And I discovered this is where my passion is, and this is where my ability is. It's very easy for them to just know, when I finish, I want to go to the technical school. Thank you.
We have now the devolved fund and we have the equalization fund. So the basic fundamentals the government has put in place. Now the issue is the leaders at the county levels to stop wasting time bickering and arguing about their allowances and start doing the work. Because at the end of the year, this money is coming back to the national government and they are not giving services to the people. So it's no longer about the national government, it's at county levels because they have all the funds that they need to do equalization. So people in Turkana now extra money for those kind of people. And then of course so that they can access education like the others.
What we need to do is we urgently need a disruptive intervention in our education system. It must be disruptive, it must be different, it must be risky. And what we need to not do is we're moving past this Nawamba Serikali. We can't wait for government to start changing policy. I spent a whole lot of time last year trying to lobby for policy change. It was a waste of time. So whether it's IT, whether it's church, whether it's helping the girl child get into a polytechnic, whatever it is, we need to disrupt this system immediately.
Again, like I believe, and what is at the heart of my work is that everything rises and falls on mindset. Now, unfortunately, we cannot change another person. What we can do is change ourselves. And that I love what Dr. King has said. It begins with self. Our own mindset, we change it. How do we change it? How we begin to look at things. For example, we've spoken about 844 and what was there before, the home science and so on and so forth. Ironically, 844, one of the objectives was to produce entrepreneurs. That was one of the objectives of 844. And today, we are not celebrating the entrepreneur, alternative industry.
We also want to lobby. We need to all lobby for better quality of standards in our medical institutions, because we are not taking the right doctors in this era. And if we go back to the doctors that we had in 1970s, doctors who are not pushed by their parents because I want mommy, baby, I want you to be a doctor. We want to have doctors who have a calling so that we ensure that even in future generations we have
Thank you, Dr. Musyoka. That brings us to the end of this panel. Wow, I mean, we could be here all day. The home, to the school, to government, everyone needs to be involved. And I hope, like you said, Dr. King, we can take it upon ourselves, because the government can't do it on their own. To make sure that we make it our personal responsibility to ensure that that mother is taken care of, that her kids are actually learning. And not just learning, have gone through school, they don't drop out, have gone to university, and then contribute to the society. Thank you once again to our panelists, to our audience.